Welcome back to Unraveled and Rewritten. Whether you're navigating change, rediscovering yourself, or seeking clarity on your next chapter, this podcast will remind you that growth often begins when certainty ends. Because when life unravels, you have the power to rewrite what comes next. In our first episode, we talked about what happens when the string starts to pull, when life begins to unravel in ways we didn't choose. For me, my season of unraveling was when I went through my divorce, because the life that I had known for over 30 years just unraveled. It became undone, and I had to figure out how to rewrite what was next. In the second episode, we talked about joy, not the surface kind, but the deep, sustaining joy that roots you when everything else feels like it's falling apart. Had it not been for joy, I would not have known where my North Star was and continues to be. So that was a tool that we got to put in our toolkit. Joy is that thing that keeps us grounded when we don't know what's next, when the certainty ends. And today, we're talking about the exhale, the moment after the storm, the pause between what was and what's next, the holy breath that reminds you you are still here. I want you to think about the last time you really exhaled. Not the quick breath you take between thoughts or tasks, but that slow, heavy exhale that feels like surrender. It's easy to forget that breath is both physical and spiritual. So in the unraveling, we tend to hold our breath. Best believe that when my season of unraveling began, I think I would go through days without exhaling, truly keeping my breath in, holding my breath, waiting for answers, waiting for stability, waiting for the next thing to make sense out of the thing that made absolutely no sense. But the exhale is the body's reminder that release is part of the restoration. That even when you can't control the unraveling, you can choose to breathe through it. And I will admit, I did not exhale enough in the beginning of my unraveling. I know that for a fact because I can remember exactly when I exhaled. I can actually remember standing in my driveway. We had decided to separate, to divorce. And my ex-husband, for the last time, was leaving the family home. So he packed up the last things of his belongings and was pulling out of our driveway. And without me even realizing it, I just did like this. I went, I let out the biggest exhale. And that is when I realized that during the unraveling, the early parts of unraveling, because the season of unraveling did not end when he pulled out of that driveway. But during the first part of that season of unraveling, I had held my breath the entire time. I had experienced a ton of emotions, a myriad of feelings, lots of tears shed, lots of questioning, sleepless nights, but there was no exhale in any of that. any of it. And I know that because for me to have been so aware of that moment in the driveway, to have been so aware that, oh my gosh, Joanne, you just exhaled for the first time in I don't know how long. And thanks to a good therapist who helped me also kind of walk through that again to realize that you had been holding your breath for a really long time. So when we are exhaling, we're saying, I can't fix it all, but I can be present in it. I can't predict the future, but I can choose peace right now. Does that resonate with anybody? That in the moment of the unknown, the undoing, that we can still choose peace and we can still decide to be present in it because of our exhale. And that's the quiet work of rewriting your story. Not rushing to rebuild, but learning to breathe again in the middle of what remains. Breath and story are connected. The same breath that left your body in that sigh of exhaustion, me in the driveway going, oh my God, can also fill our lungs with new possibilities. You cannot take in and inhale fresh air, new breath, unless you exhale. In the ancient language, the word for breath and spirit are actually the same. They're the same, y'all. Breath was life, divine, intentional, sustaining. We need breath, okay? So what if, stay with me, what if every exhale is actually an act of rewriting? What if every breath says, I'm still becoming? Because I am breathing, because I have inhaled and exhaled and I have taken that breath, I am still becoming. Again, sometimes all it takes is reframing the things that we take for granted, the things that we don't notice, the things that happen every day, changing the lens. Sometimes that's all it takes. So let's pause here. If you're able, close your eyes. Breathe in through your nose. Hold for a moment and release. As you exhale, imagine letting go of the pressure to have it all figured out. Imagine releasing or letting go the things that you can't control. We can control our breath. So let's do that one more time. Close your eyes. Inhale. Hold it for a moment and exhale. Releasing and letting go. Now ask yourself, what am I holding that no longer serves me? Okay? What am I ready to release? What truth is trying to surface when I finally breathe? And I think that's where I was. Not exhaling meant that I didn't have to come face to face with the fact and the truth that my marriage was really over. That he would no longer be in the house. That he had taken the last things that I would see of him in that space. And I think when I exhaled, it was me allowing that to surface. It did surface. I think that is what prompted the exhale. My willingness to face the truth that was like right in front of me. The thing that I had not wanted to unravel, the thing that I kept poking back into the sweater. Episode 1, you'll understand what I mean. I kept putting that thread back into the sweater, okay? Denial doesn't mean that we aren't moving through life with good intentions. Denial doesn't mean that we still don't have good intentions. But denial may sometimes be the thing that makes the exhale that much harder. That if I'm not willing to breathe through this unraveling, I may not be able to face some really hard truths. I may not be able to release the thing that I may need to release. For some, it may be the thing that no longer serves you. Okay? So when we stop trying to control the narrative, we make room for the story that's trying to emerge. Sometimes that comes with circumstances that happen to us. Sometimes those are things that we make way for. But the most powerful thing that you can do after the unraveling is exhale and wait for the next chapter to rise. It's going to. It has to. Okay? Because with joy as your North Star, and as you are exhaling, you are releasing and opening yourself up to the what next. Breathing is something our bodies do automatically. But exhaling with intention takes practice. I have to be consciously aware of my breath. We know that we take breathing for granted, like it's what our body is designed to do. It does it without us even having to think about it. But exhaling with intention, that takes practice. It's the same with living after loss or disappointment or change. Your body remembers the tension, but your soul, it's longing for that rhythm. I really did feel a void of any rhythm after the loss of my marriage. And I don't think we frame marriage enough as a loss. It is a dying of part of yourself. When you came together with someone and became one, there is a loss when you now have to undo that. Literally take the DNA of someone else out of your own being. But here's a practice that I share with my clients, the women that I coach. So one, there's the pause. Before reacting or deciding on something, to take one full breath. Let it slow you down long enough to hear your own voice again. Because in the unraveling, you're going to be hearing a lot of things in your head. You're going to be feeling a lot of things in your heart. And there are also going to be these external voices. So, 1, pause. Number 2, the release. Exhale whatever doesn't belong to you. Expectations, comparison, self-doubt. You don't have to carry what isn't yours. For me, in my season of unraveling, what I had to release was the pain, sadness, disappointment, and at times anger that other people were feeling about my divorce. I had to release that. I could not carry what wasn't mine. And all of their emotions, valid emotions for them, weren't emotions I could carry because I had my own, but it wasn't mine to carry either. So, the release. 3, the receive. As you breathe in again, whisper something true to yourself. I'm still here. I'm still becoming. Well, that one's my favorite. This story isn't over. That one just stayed with me to the point where I got it tattooed, these 3 dots tattooed on my body, because the ellipses at the end of a sentence means that the sentence hasn't ended. The story is not over. So whatever that thing is that you need to whisper to yourself that is true, do that as you breathe in and receive it. Those breaths are how you begin to live again. Not by rushing into the next thing, although our default is to want to do that. Okay, part of that is like we want to be distracted by something, so we want to rush into whatever the next thing is. But by honoring your very breath, which is proof of life, resilience, and grace, you are allowing yourself not to rush, but to begin to live again in your own timing. So, with that, I want to leave you with this thought. Sometimes your unraveling, the unraveling, doesn't end neatly. Sometimes you simply learn to breathe differently because you are going through the unravel. The exhale reminds us that we don't always need to have the right words or the perfect plan, okay? Because I sure didn't know what the plan was or the next big step. Sometimes we just need to breathe. I had months after my unraveling where all I really needed to do was breathe. That's it. No expectations. I just needed to breathe. So, as we close this episode, I want to invite you to take one last deep breath with me. Inhale all that is new and possible, and exhale everything that's been heavy. This week, when life tries to rush you, come back to your breath. When you feel lost, come back to your breath. When you start doubting your story, come back to your breath. Because that is where your story begins. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Unraveled and Rewritten. If this conversation spoke to you, share it with someone who's in their own season of unraveling. And remember, every breath you take is another chance to begin again.